Hey everybody, my name is Sharon Quinn and I'm also known as the original runway diva, and you are watching Model Behavior. Class is officially in session. My guest lecturer today is Natalie Abruzzo, an award-winning freelance journalist and filmmaker based in New York. In 2015, Natalie worked as an on-air reporter while simultaneously completing her first documentary short, The 66%, about disparities between women's clothing sizes, body shapes, and cultural norms. Welcome to Model Behavior, Natalie Abruzzo. What's up, girl? Welcome, welcome. How you doing, Mama?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. Now you know how we do it here. We're going to jump right into it. Let's take it back to the beginning.
Right.
How did you even know that you wanted to do a documentary?
Oh goodness. So well, okay. So I was in graduate school. And in graduate school, I was working on my journalism degree, and I was working on a story that was about prom dresses. And I had read an article about prom dresses and sizes and the lack thereof for plus sizes for young girls who want to go to prom but cannot find a dress in their size. And this was in New York and New Jersey. And I thought, well, this is crazy. It was 2013 at the time. And I thought, this is insane to be in such a huge metropolis and to be in 2013 and to still be seeing some of the things that I experienced.
Yeah, we don't go to prom. Right. Okay.
I mean, clearly there's an issue here. So I went ahead and I hadn't done a whole lot of research, but I went ahead and I started doing some looking on the internet and trying to find clothing outlets, formal wear. This particular one mentioned a clothing designer that did formal wear called Sydney's Closet.
Okay. I'm familiar with her.
Yeah, a lot of people are familiar with them, but I didn't know them then, and I was struck by the fact that this is not even a company that's in New York City. This is a company that's somewhere in the Midwest. And I thought, well, what about, you know, a place like any kind of formal wear that's here, like a David's Bridal and formal, right?
Been there, no.
Right, and it was crazy. And then I started finding these wonderful women who represented the body shape and size that looked like me, but they were super famous on Instagram. And there was like this word called influencer. And I said, what is this? Who are these women that are posing in brand spanking new clothes that are on trend, that look dynamite, and they look dynamite in them, and they're doing poses like lifestyle models typically do to showcase cataloging, you know.
Yes, I do.
And I said, who are these amazing women? And it was just, there were so many. If you keep looking, you find these brilliant people. And I found one woman, Marie Denay, the curvy fashionista, yes. And I reached out, and she got back to me right away. She couldn't necessarily be interviewed because she wasn't in the New York City area at the time, but she connected me with probably one of the most amazing women I think I've ever met in my entire life, and her name is Gwendolyn DeVoe.
Absolutely.
And from there, it just kind of began to build and build and build. Now, Gwen was very gracious and introduced myself and my partners that were working on the story with me about the prom to a lot of different people, yourself included, yes, and introduced me to this whole world called the Full Figured Fashion Week. Okay, so long story short, I was working on a program for CUNY Television through the graduate school about plus-size prom and the dilemma of finding something to wear. And it led me down this amazing path. And I said, you know what? I've been wondering why I can't find clothes that I love, that fit me really well, that look dynamite on me. And I'm one in a million, you know what I mean? There are so many of us, women, that don't look necessarily like the status quo normal.
I hate that word. I hate that word. I hate that word.
I do too. And I just use it to showcase the point of the majority of women do wear a size 14 or higher.
Yeah.
And in doing the research, I said, you know, there's so much more to this. And what is this full-figured fashion week?
But let me stop you for 1 second. So how did you come up with, because I know where you're going with this, but how did you come up with the title, the 66%?
The 66%. So it took me a long time to come up with the title. For a long time, this was the Untitled Body Project.
Okay.
For a couple of years, it was the Untitled Body Project because I didn't want to miscommunicate what it was that I thought that I was going for. You know, my background in studying in the graduate program was also in health and science, and the health and science of everything fascinates me, as does how things appear in society, cultural norms, and that sort of thing. And so in the research that I was doing, I was looking at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention because that's where you can find so much data about obesity. People that, there's this notion that there's this epidemic of obesity, which is a very long conversation to have, but there isn't really an epidemic of obesity. Bodies are just getting larger.
Yes, they are.
And they've been progressively getting larger for decades.
Well, that's because we eat, as we go from generation to generation, we eat differently. The stuff that we're eating changes, so, you know. Yeah.
Yes. But there's also, that is definitely a factor. There are certain things that didn't exist maybe you're 60 or 70, 100 years ago, for fast food, for instance, or heavily processed foods and that sort of thing. But there's also a lot of other environmental factors that come into play that people don't realize, or your own personal wellness, your own personal health and wellness that contribute to your biology contributes to, genetics contributes to, that are not always talked about because there's this this really interesting fear amongst the public health sector about, you know, if we talk about obesity being this crazy epidemic and it really endangers your health all around, people will work very, very hard to not be that. Plus, society will tell you it's bad, it's shameful, don't be fat. But
that doesn't work. Right.
So it's a really complicated subject to unpack. And where I wanted to start, with I get up every morning, you get up every morning, we either go to a job or we start our day doing something in the house, whatever it is you're going to do, you're going to put on clothes.
Absolutely.
So you want clothes that fit you, but you also want clothes that look good.
You want to feel good in your clothing.
That too. And I came to notice, I mean, my whole life it's been a struggle when you're going out with your friends to the store and you can't try on the same things that they're trying on, or you kind of try to, you know, on the low, go to the higher sizes and don't let them know it, so you can go in the dressing room and try on the same thing that they're trying on, or see if they even have it in your size. So I just thought that there was like all of this stuff surrounding what we even put on our bodies, let alone what we're putting in our bodies. And I was really drawn, I mean, who couldn't be drawn to Gwen DeVoe and yourself, but I was drawn by the fact that these super powerful, amazingly gorgeous and gracious women said, you know what? We all want to look good. We all want clothes that look great on us. So you know what? We're going to start something that the New York Fashion Week is not doing. And so I know that that goes into territory more talking about as we get into the documentary, but for me it was, I finally met some people that had the same kind of qualms as I did about, you know, why is society so against us? You know.
And we're the majority. Let's be real.
Yes.
We're the majority.
Yes.
It's more of us than there is of you.
Yes.
But the problem from what I can see, the problem is the people that don't look like me are the ones who are running the industry.
Yeah.
And they have their foot on the door, so they'll open it a crack because they see the dollar value.
Right.
But they're not opening it all the way up. And that's what we're dealing with today.
But do they see the full dollar value?
Yeah, they do. But they're still stuck on that whole stigma thing. Because the word on the street is a lot of these 7th Avenue major fashion houses, during the recession, that's how they kept their businesses afloat, through their plus-size collections. So they know that that money is out there. It's just a silly mentality in fashion where they don't want the stigma attached to dressing a big person, which is stupid. All you should be concerned about is how much money you're going to make.
Right. At the end of the day, everybody gets into business for one thing and one thing only: money.
And if you're not in business for that, why are you in business?
And the numbers show that plus-size women in the beauty and fashion industry all pretty much outspend straight-size women in every aspect. And so this notion that there's a stigma, I mean, there are definitely designers out there that say, you know, no, I don't want to dress a fat woman. I don't want my clothing to be on a woman who's got a larger body. Also, because in the modeling industry, I'm not in the industry, but they look at the models as hangers.
But you are in the industry. And that's you know, let me just segue for a little bit, because you're you do on-air interviews. You're on-air talent, right?
Yeah, I do. I have been, and I still continue to.
So how does that affect? Do you find that same thing sort of transfers itself to your industry?
Absolutely.
Because I see what they put the chunky newscasters on television, because I watch the news every day. Yes,
it is a media across the board. I mean, there's lots of documentation about media across the board, and it is there's stigma is a great word. It's stifling. There's not a whole lot of opportunity for you depending on what you look like, because it is a business based on your looks, just as modeling or fashion in a different way, right? So if you're a print reporter or a radio personality, you're not being seen. Your voice is, and so your intelligence in that manner comes through your voice, whether it's in the writing that you're doing or whether it's in the delivery on air. But if you're in front of a camera, there's this idea that trying to sell a woman who isn't a size 0 or 2 might be off-putting for the audience, which is very bizarre.
Yeah, who the hell is saying that?
But it's bizarre because if you want to think about the sizing across the country and what women look like across the country, I mean, you know, you're talking about local news that is in the heart of America. It's definitely on the coast, but if you're looking at all of America and you're looking at the majority of women it's 66%. So it's 65.8%. In 2014, it was about, you know, so it was roughly rounded out to 66% of women were considered overweight, which meant that their BMI was 25 or higher. Right? So there's the classification of overweight, obesity, morbid obesity. So I wanted to start right just at overweight and what BMI is telling people. And more scientists are talking about how BMI is not the greatest indicator of health in relation to size. And we know so much more. Even in the few years that I started this project, we know so much more about the fact that you can be fit and fat at the same time, that your health is not determined by your size. There are so many different factors that go into your health and well-being that aren't directly related to whether you're overweight by 10, 15, 20, 30, 50, 100 pounds. That doesn't mean that there can't be implications involved, health implications involved, once you start to get heavier, for sure. And I'm not a doctor, and I don't want to pretend to be a doctor or a scientist. I'm not a scientist. But just in the research that I've done over the last few years, there's this thing called, I'm going to stumble a little bit, but it's called obesity, the healthy obese. And so you can be a certain size, but your health is fantastic and great. Or if you're skinny, you could be considered obese just based on your health internally on your side. On your health itself.
Who came up with that title, the healthy obese? I don't like that at all.
I think it's and again, let me just like,
because there's nothing positive about that word obese.
Oh, so you look at obese as being
the way it has been played at me my whole life. Obese is not a good word. It's not a place you ever want to be.
Yeah.
So the healthy obese, what does that mean?
Oh, metabolically, so we might have to go back over this, Sharon Quinn, but it's the metabolic instance within your body. So your body can say that you might be overweight or considered obese based on your BMI, based on the CDC and their recommendations through all of the studies that they do. But internally, you're healthy. And so the notion that, like, again, correlating obesity with health and being unhealthy, the reason that they want to highlight and say that word, I'm guessing, is because even though you may be considered in that category of being obese, you're still internally healthy.
I think we should change the narrative. I don't like that. I'm sorry. Nah. I will never tell someone I'm healthy obese. No, I'm just healthy.
Yeah. Okay. And that's fair. And this is the way the science industry is talking about it. I don't know that necessarily it's being talked about in societal realms in that manner. I'm just speaking from the scientific studies.
I don't know anybody who would want to be called that. Y'all, drop something in the comments and let me know if you cool with being healthy obese. I don't think so, but okay.
But that goes into the whole other thing about this work, right? Society wants to tell us that we're bad. Society wants to constantly be negative about who we are, women in general. And don't even get me started on when you take into consideration for racial issues in terms of Black women. I think it's like 82% of Black women are considered overweight or more. And then there's Latino women and Asian women, and it's a lot. And then when you take into consideration the racial disparities in society and put that on what the sizing is, it is a whole unraveling of situations.
So you don't think that the narrative needs to change?
Yeah. Starting
with the CDC, maybe y'all need to go back and look at what, these stats we've been following for how many years? I don't think that they've been adjusted for inflation, if you will. Well,
statistically speaking, when you look at, so it's tricky, right? Because scientists are doing research, and they're looking at groups of people that they can study and how they study them, and there's a lot that goes into it. Again, I'm not a scientist. I don't work in a research lab, so I can't give you the very detailed ins and outs of performing these studies. But what I can say is that studies are showing a different narrative. Studies are still using, science is still using the terms and conditions that we've been given all these years, but they are changing the narrative. Where I have seen the narrative not changing is in public health. The narrative still continues to be that doctors don't want there to be a notion that you can be obese and healthy, because the fear is that people don't know how to take care of themselves, so they're going to make unhealthy choices in their life that because they think they have a free reign or something. There's nothing to stop them. If you tell them you can't put on 20 pounds because you'll be in the obesity or morbid obesity, and then you've got heart disease and diabetes and cancer and all of these horrible things that you get told about. But it's not the obesity that brings those on. It's the inner workings of ourselves inside. Things change. Hormonally, things change. Your sugar intake and your glucose levels that might not be able to break stuff down might change. And that can happen to you at 100 pounds or 300 pounds. Again, I don't want to pretend to be a doctor. So, but I'm just saying that there's a lot to unpack about these notions about being healthy, being a certain size or shape, and where we fit into society. And I think ultimately looking at how we carry ourselves and how we dress and our body positivity, if you will, because that's a term that people are definitely using, shows. Do
Okay.
you have a
No, I'm not even going to touch that one.
Yeah, that one's a lot to unpack also. Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you think that how will the 66% help to, I don't know, maybe do you think it can help to start changing the narrative?
I really hope so. That is why I wanted to expand the documentary. As you know, the documentary short was completed and we screened it in 2016. And, I heard really nice things about it.
It's great.
Thank you. But I don't know, it started some dialogue in some of the screenings that I think women felt so, they just couldn't wait to talk. They couldn't wait to say, I've been feeling this way, or why are we talking about it like this? Why aren't we including others? Why can't we have nice clothes? Like this whole notion that we have to somehow sit in the dark, behind closed doors or curtains, and don't go outside, don't try to,
Yeah, we don't have sex. We don't get married. We don't party. We don't go to prom. We don't do. Y'all are crazy if y'all think that that's what's happening.
Right. We live life the same way that everybody else lives life. But because if you bring it back to media tells us that the only people that are allowed to live life are skinny, white women. And that's just not who we are overall. Right?
No, I'm not a skinny white woman. But okay, so
So with the expansion, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine.
With the expansion of the documentary, what I hope to do is I hope to bring in more women that I couldn't fit in that are talking about this, that are in all kinds of different realms of industry. Because the one that I created in the short really focuses on Full Figured Fashion Week and the amazing women that put that together, and what it's like for the models and for the casting director and for the producer and all of this behind the scenes that's going on, and this notion about clothes. So clothing drives us all because we are all there. The majority of us, 66% of us, according to the CDC, the majority of us are also, size 14 or larger, okay? So I want to talk more and more and more about how we change, as you've said before, the narrative about where we belong in society, because we're already in society, existing and thriving. And have been doing that since the beginning of time. Yes. But this idea that media, who I love media, I mean, I'm in the media. I will stand up for media all day, every day, but there are still these factions of discrimination that go on, that tell women where your place is or isn't. in the media. And that's from television shows to movies to modeling and the like. It's in all of those realms. Magazines.
Oh yeah, I've worked in publishing. Oh. I've sat in meetings and I've been like, so y'all realize I'm fat, right? You're not just gonna sit here and make fat jokes with the one fat person that's in the room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say this, that I've seen it change. I've seen people start to catch up, because we've been saying this for 20 years. You're missing a whole market. Yeah. You're missing a whole market that you guys are sitting here joking about, but these people spend money.
Yes.
So I see it changing in media, but then I also see them revert back to a lot of the old behaviors.
So, yes, and so to me, it's just like everything else, right? So we had a really big boom in the plus size realm, I think between 2014 and 2017. It was
that was the second one.
It was, yes, because there was definitely one in the 90s.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, this was the second one. Most people don't realize that.
I do.
But go ahead, I'm sorry.
No,
I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're fine. But yes, there was definitely one in the 90s, and it was a big one. But where did it go? Right. So then now, I feel like between 2014 and 2017, it was like, you know, and we were like, bam, Ashley Graham. She's breaking the mold. She's doing something nobody else did. People love Ashley Graham, and she's everywhere. And Ashley Graham is stunning. And from what I can tell, I've never met her, but she's as sweet, girl. Yes, as lovely sweet girl as can be, right? Nebraska, born and raised, right?
Very sweet girl.
So, but she represents one thing in the industry. There are so many more women that look like her and don't look like her, but are the same size. And you know what I mean by that. Do. And again, we go back to diversity. We go back to representation of all women, because this is America, and America is full of everybody, everybody. And we all exist in shapes, sizes, and colors. We do. We just do.
I agree.
You know.
Okay. And so, tell us how we can find you on social media, how they can get in contact with you, and how we can find the 66%.
Well, we are everywhere, basically. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. So Instagram is the words, the 66%.
Okay. And
Facebook is the same.
Okay.
And Twitter is the, and the number 66, and then %.
Spelled out.
Right.
Okay.
So, and then we also have a website, and
What's
that is the66%.com.
All right, guys. So it looks like we're just about out of time. I'd like to thank my guest, Natalie Abruzzo, for sharing her industry knowledge with us today. Now, before I go, as always, I want to leave you with a few thoughts. I want you to, 1, remember that you can't change the game until you first learn the game. 2, always surround yourself with positive people and positive things. 3, do what you love and love what you do. And lastly, be who you are, but be who you are tastefully. Always have a little class about yourself. Now, don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Thanks for watching Model Behavior, and I'll see you guys next week. Class is officially dismissed. Bye, y'all.